Welcome back, children. Today we will take up the second poem in your 12th standard syllabus, and that is called An Elementary School Classroom in a Slum by Stephen Spender. Now, Stephen Spender was an English poet and an essayist. He went to University College Oxford but did not bother to finish his degree and went to Berlin in 1930 after the World War I. Spender took a keen interest in politics, and having seen the back home poverty that was endured by the British population after the World War I and the economic downturn that followed, and all the feudal societal economic differences between the various classes of the people was also quite bothersome to him. And therefore, he took to socialism and declared himself to be a socialist and a pacifist. He wrote several books and essays. In fact, he also had a stint with communism, but he was soon disillusioned, and you'll read in another of your stories, Poets and Pancakes, in your syllabus in this book, and how he became an essayist and how he tried to influence the people at the Gemini Studios and was not very successful at it. He talks about the struggle of the modern and an autobiography, World Within the World, and in An Elementary School Classroom in a Slum, he has concentrated on the themes of social injustice and class inequalities. And that is how we will approach this poem, with the view that the social differences, the class inequalities exist in all societies and how they need to be addressed. We will see how the poet develops upon the layers and layers of this poem, first exposing to us how the children in the slum school survive, what is their condition. Then he'll talk about the condition of the school itself, then of what is happening in the society and what is the consequence of this dereliction of these slum people, and how these slum people can ultimately be helped by those who take easily to philanthropy. So not only is he describing us what the problem is, introducing us to the problem of the slum children, but he's also trying to give us a solution to the problem, which in a way is a very socialist view. And since he had taken upon himself to be a socialist and a pacifist is somebody who does not like war, somebody who wants to make peace. And a socialist is somebody who believes in the greatest good of the greatest numbers. Unlike a capitalist who says, it's I, me and myself for a capitalist. A friend in need is not a good friend, is what a capitalist would say. And the socialist would go against this line of thought and talk about achieving greater good of the greatest numbers. So let's take on the poem, and we will be taking up the first stanza today. This will include a lot of explanation and poetic devices. So I want you all to keep your pen and notebook ready, and please take them down as I write them on the board, taking you through the explanations of the lines of the first stanza. Let's give it a quick read. I'll keep down the book now and let's focus on the board. Right. So it says, far, far from gusty waves, these children's faces, like rootless weeds, the hair torn round their pallor. Let's take up line wise. So, far, far from gusty waves, these children's faces. At the very outset, the poet is trying to emphasize certain things. I'll be underlining all the poetic devices in red pen and writing them down in blue pen. So please make sure you take down the notes directly in your book or in a separate notebook. Now, at the very first line, we see the repetition of the word far, far. When repetition happens, the poet in that scenario simply wants to suggest that this is being emphasized. So number one we come across is repetition. Then, far, far from dusty waves, these children's faces. Let me put here number two. Number 2 is synecdoche. Synecdoche. So far, far from gusty waves, these children's faces. Now, gusty waves. Gusty wave itself becomes a metaphor. It means the open areas where strong winds are there and waves are there. So the poet is trying to tell us that he's talking about, yes children, he's talking about sea beaches. So let's write down here number 3. Put a circle. Number 3 would be gusty waves. I prefer that this is a metaphor. So let's write down number 3 as metaphor. Metaphor for open spaces and beaches. Open spaces or beaches where you have strong winds and waves. Why he's talking about them, we'll find it out later in the poem, why is he referring to this again and again. But in a way it gives us the hint as to the location of the poem, because he's talking about that the place these children themselves are quite far away, far, repetitions, emphasis, very far away from open spaces and beaches. So wherever they are living, wherever they are, it's definitely not near the beaches and open areas. Like rootless weeds. Like rootless weeds. This again becomes a poetic device. This is number 4, and this is number 4 is simile. So number 4, simile. Number 4 is simile, because the comparison of the children is being done with the rootless weeds, and they're using like. The use of like to introduce a comparison definitely makes it a simile. Like rootless weeds. Now what does rootless weeds mean? Rootless weeds. Now weed, we all know, is an unwanted plant in a field of a crop. So weed is something that is unwanted. And what does rootless convey? You see, a person is rooted to the place he belongs to where his ancestors have lived. For example, I hail from Prayagraj, and I'd say I'm rooted to Prayagraj. Others among you might be rooted to the cities around you, to the villages that you hail from, to other states and maybe other countries as well. But that is where your roots are. That's where you originated. That's where your families have been living for years and years, and where your ancestors belonged. So that is, it creates a sense of belonging. So rootless conveys that these children do not belong to the place. And weeds conveys that neither are they wanted. Very unfortunate for these children to belong to both these categories at the same time. I mean, you could belong to a place and not be wanted by the people there. But at least you can say, this place is mine, I belong there. But here the children can neither belong to that place, nor are they wanted in that place. So they're probably squatters in a place, in a slum. Like, that's how the population in the slum is usually. The hair torn around their pallor. Now this tells us another sad story. This tells us another sad story. It says, one, they're not wanted by the society. They don't belong where they live. Then it says their hair torn round their pallor. Pallor suggests the paleness of the faces, which directly tells us that there's something wrong with the children. They are not very healthy. So, but the condition that they are in appearing to the people, the hair torn around the pallor, means the parents even have not even bothered to give them a hairdo in the morning when they leave for the school. So they're not even cared for by the parents. Such is the condition of these poor slum children. unwanted by society, not belonging to the place, pale faces, appearing very unhealthy, and then uncared for by the parents. There's nothing more that could probably go wrong for these kids. The tall girl with a weighed down head. Now we're given the description of the children in the classroom by the poet. The first one being a tall girl. Now this tall girl is sitting with her head bowed down on a desk. It could directly suggest to us fatigue, malnutrition, and that is highly likely because she lives in a slum and you don't expect the children of a slum to eat like a prince. So malnutrition can definitely be the case here. But then the poet could have simply said, girl, the girl with her weighed down head. The word tall brings us to another explanation to this statement of this particular line. It suggests that the girl has probably outgrown the elementary school class. You see, the school is an elementary school, means it's up to grade 5. But what if the girl is of an age where she should be sitting in grade 6, 7 or 8? But then the school and the slum, it does not offer those grades. So she is forced to sit in a classroom which she probably was 3 years ago, and she has to continue to sit in that classroom because that is the highest class available in the school, in the slum. So it is highly likely that she is quite ashamed to sit in that classroom, and that is why her head is weighed down. The next child that we have in the class is a paper-seaming boy. Now there's a direct comparison. Now this is not a simile or a metaphor. He's been likened he's been compared directly, like thin paper, thin boy. But the child is said to be with rat's eyes. Now if you try to work that out, it would be a small-faced boy with really round, big eyes set straight into his face, and it would seem almost like a character out of an animation movie, but it is not. What it suggests is that the child is definitely malnutrition. There's something wrong with him. His eyes are probably protruding. That could be because of certain hormonal problems that the child might have. He might be suffering from problems with his thyroid, in which the eyes bulge out, or probably the poet is trying to suggest more metaphorically. The poet is trying to suggest metaphorically that the child is forever hungry. He's got this hunger in his eyes. He's being opportunistic. He's being timid. All the characteristics of a rat. Very timid, very waiting for the moment to escape, waiting for that moment to steal, waiting for that opportunity. So rat is an opportunist. A rat is also somebody who's very timid and very afraid. So the boy is showing these characteristics, and therefore this becomes a metaphor number 3. Right? Here metaphor for hungry eyes, opportunistic eyes. And then we are told that this boy is stunted. Stunted, malnutrition. Reason? Malnutrition. And he's been called unlucky. An unlucky heir. Heir is somebody who inherits something. So whatever this child has inherited has made him unlucky. Let's read on. The stunted, unlucky heir of twisted bones. Now twisted bones can be a condition of rickets. He could be suffering from rickets. Stunted, malnutrition. Stunted would mean malnutrition. Pallor means pale color. Paleness. Okay? So, let me write here. Rootless weeds would mean not belonging and unwanted. So he's suffering from rickets, which is nothing but vitamin D deficiency. Deficiency of vitamin D, sorry. Vitamin D deficient. Well, what is this boy doing? What is he involved in? He's involved in reciting. And what is he reciting? He is reciting his lesson from his desk. The boy is reciting his lesson from his desk. This means the boy is speaking whatever he has been asked to speak or repeat in the classroom. But the act of reciting conveys two things to us. Reciting as in speaking after somebody or from memory, and reciting here also conveys the act of telling by the way he was looking. How was he looking? He was looking like suffering from a father's gnarled disease. And I'll re-underline this gnarled disease because there are going to be two poetic devices. The first one, I will put it as number 5, and this one is going to be again number 3. The entire A Father's Gnarled Disease is a poetic device called enjambment. When a phrase or a clause is inserted forcefully without any break in punctuation in a line which provides a discontinuation to the sense. Now the sense here is the stunted unlucky heir of twisted bones reciting his lesson from his desk. So we see that this part, A Father's Gnarled Disease, has been shoved inside this line without any break in punctuation, and therefore it is an enjambment. You may remember it for an examination, but if you not, it's just to understand how the poet has presented this poem. It's basically the syntax of this poem as we understand this. But these two words, gnarled disease. Now, gnarled disease talks about, let me write down the meaning of both the words. The archaic meaning of gnarled, this particular word, I will put a cross here and I will explain the word here, or let me explain it here. I'll explain the word here. Let's write down gnarled. Gnarled meant cursed. Gnarled meant cursed. When I say it meant cursed, this is the old use of the word gnarls. Now the word gnarled came from the knotted structure of certain trees. So this was deemed as a gnarl. This was called a gnarl. Now it was a carpenter's nightmare to come across a wood with too many knots in it, because every time he would try to cut through the wood, the plank would split from where there were too many knots. So it was really hard and unworkable kind of logs that the carpenters would encounter, and they would curse at it every time it would happen. So they started calling them gnarls, and gnarls always invited curses. So a wood with too many gnarls was called the cursed wood. So here the word gnarled conveys again two things. One, the cursed disease. Disease is poverty. So this now disease is a metaphor for poverty. This is a metaphor for cursed poverty. This is a metaphor for cursed poverty. So, what has the child inherited? He has inherited his father's poverty, which has led to a condition of stunted growth and twisted bones. Twisted bones is not what he has inherited, as a lot of books will tell you that he has inherited rheumatitis or twisted bones and rickets. No, rickets is a deficiency disease. It does not pass on genetically from the parents to the children, but what the child has inherited, an unlucky heir. He is an unlucky heir of the cursed poverty of his father, because his father could not provide him a good childhood, a childhood where the food was nutritious, where there was education, where there was hygiene. Therefore the child is suffering. He's got poor nutrition, malnutrition, therefore he is stunted, and because of deficiency of vitamins and minerals, he's suffering from bow legs or rickets. Let's move on. There's another child where at the back of the dim class. Now please try, as you go through this poem, you have to question things. The poet could have said, at the back of the class. Why does he say the dim class? He says dim class because he's trying to bring some coherence with the next paragraph, with the next stanza in the poem, where he'll be talking about the classroom. So he's giving us the introduction to the classroom. He says the classroom is dim lit. So not good enough lighting is there. Again, this shows lack of amenities in the classroom. It is not even properly lighted for children to create an environment of conduciveness where studies can actually take place, where some serious studies or education can happen. So, one unnoted, sweet and young. So, who's the child who's sitting at the back of the class? One unnoted, sweet and young. So, somebody who's very quiet. An unnoted child in a classroom is a child who's usually a backbencher, who's not too much of a questioning kind of a chap, who sits quietly, probably his eyes out of the window, enjoying what is happening outside the classroom rather than being interested in what is happening in the classroom. And this also gives you a fair idea of the kind of teaching that is taking place in the slum classroom. If the child is unnoted and in the classroom, it is definitely, there is some accountability of the teacher who's there in the classroom. Yes, it is. It always is. If the teacher is alert and if the teacher is active in the classroom, it is, I believe, simply not possible for any child to not be on the radar of the teacher and not being able to pay attention to what the teacher is saying. It is, teacher should be like a magician in a classroom. I'm digressing, but that's it. He should hold everybody's attention. So, we're seeing the quality of teaching that is happening. We're seeing the ambience of the classroom is poor. But we are told this boy is really sweet. Now, it's an elementary school, so you don't have very big boys there. So he's sweet and he's young. And what is happening? His eyes live in a dream. So he's aloof from the class. He's indifferent to what is happening in the class. He's not interested in what is happening in the class. He's lost in his own world. And what is he interested in? He's interested in a game of squirrels scampering about the trees outside the window. Now, why I say outside the window? Now, let's look at the structure of the sentence here. His eyes live in a dream of squirrels game in tree room. If you mark the comma, it comes after room. Had it been in tree and room other than this, it would have given us a direct understanding. When I say a room other than this, means outside this room. So where are the trees and squirrels? The trees and squirrels are outside the room, and the squirrels are scampering about from one tree to the other, and the child is busy seeing their scampering and enjoying their little game. He's disinterested in what is happening in the classroom, and he is not being bothered by the teacher at all, because the teacher probably is not paying attention to that boy. That brings us to the end of the first paragraph, first stanza. Now very quickly let me take you through the poetic devices. Far far is a repetition, gusty waves is a metaphor, faces is a synecdoche. Now let me explain. Synecdoche is when we use a part of something or someone to talk about that whole entirety of that whole thing or a person. So here, faces doesn't mean that the children's bodies are at the beach and their faces are in the classroom. No. We are using the faces to talk about the children. The face is part of one's personality, but that is being referred to talk about the entire person. So children's faces, and therefore faces is a part which is being used for a whole, therefore it becomes a synecdoche. Then we talk about like rootless weeds. The children are being likened to rootless weeds, unwanted and not belonging, therefore it's a simile. Then number 5, rat's eyes again is a metaphor, as I said. Then we're talking about a father's gnarl disease, that's number 5, which is an enjambment. As explained, enjambment is a phrase or a clause which is introduced in a line, breaking the logical sequence without the use of a punctuation. There is no use of punctuation after reciting. The line otherwise should have read, the stunted unlucky heir of twisted bones, reciting his lesson from his desk. Therefore, we move on. Again, gnarl disease, as I said, is a metaphor. Again, it stands for poverty. This entire thing is an enjambment, and the gnarl disease is metaphor. And that's about. Now you can look for certain alliterations if you want, but let's see what we've got. Squirrel's game, tree room, other than this. Notice sweet young his eyes given a dream lesson, test back dim. Well, that's about it. Those are the poetic devices. This is the first stanza. I hope you've understood that the poet is trying to bring to us give us a brief about the location of the slum. It is away from open spaces and beaches. We don't know where exactly it is. We'll have clarity in the later paragraphs. We have seen that the classroom is poorly furnished. Children are not paying attention. Most of them are malnutrition. Some are overaged for the class. So it's a motley crew in the classroom, not really belonging and yet there. So the condition of the children has been told to us pretty clearly. There's malnutrition which is rife. There's poverty. They're uncared for. Their hair is unkempt and torn around their heads. They're pale in their faces. And they're far away from good beaches and open spaces. That's all for today. Please look forward to the next video soon, within the next 24 hours. I'll be putting it up online. Please do like and subscribe the channel, and I look forward to your continuous subscription and patronage. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.